Professor Daniel Carter had always been admired on campus for his intelligence, confidence, and undeniable charm. At 34, he carried himself with the elegance of a man who had lived enough to know passion and the hunger to share it. His literature classes were never ordinary lessons. They were journeys through love, tragedy, and desire. Students adored him, but none more quietly and intensely than Emily Johnson, a bright and graceful 21-year-old who sat in the front row, her blue eyes always locked on his every word. She was different from the others, not only because of her beauty, but because of the way she understood him, the way she connected to the emotions hidden in the poetry he recited. Every time she raised her hand, every time her lips curved into a smile while quoting Shakespeare or Keats, Daniel felt something stir inside him that he fought to suppress. He knew she admired him, not just as a professor, but as a man, and that thought alone made his heart race faster than he liked to admit. The attraction was subtle at first, a stolen glance, a brush of hands when she passed him her assignment, the soft way she lingered when class ended as though she never wanted to leave. Daniel told himself it was only admiration, but in the quiet moments after lectures, when her laughter echoed in his memory, he knew it was more. He began to notice details he shouldn't have, how her golden hair caught the light, how her perfume lingered faintly in the air when she walked by, how her presence filled a room with something warm and magnetic. Emily, too, felt it. Sitting in his class wasn't just about literature anymore. It was about being near him, hearing his voice, catching his eyes on her when he thought no one noticed. She stayed after lectures under the excuse of asking questions, leaning just a little too close, smiling in ways that sent shivers down his spine. There was an unspoken tension, an invisible thread pulling them toward one another, something that neither rules nor logic could stop. She felt alive in his presence, as though every word he spoke was meant only for her. In those moments, professor and student no longer felt like roles. They were simply a man and a woman, caught in a dangerous attraction they couldn't deny. The world outside didn't matter, the rules didn't matter. All that mattered was the growing fire between them, burning stronger every day, threatening to consume them both. The evening was quiet. The halls of the college, nearly empty as the sun dipped low behind the tall New York buildings, casting golden light into the classroom. Emily stayed behind after everyone left, holding her notebook close to her chest, her heart racing with anticipation. She told herself she was only here to ask about her thesis, but deep inside she knew there was more pulling her to him, something unexplainable yet irresistible. Daniel sat at his desk, his tie loosened, his sleeves rolled up, looking less like a professor and more like a man at ease, a man she longed to know beyond the walls of the classroom. She approached slowly, her voice soft as she asked for his help, and he leaned over beside her, their shoulders brushing as they bent over the same page. The closeness sent sparks through her body, a heat that rose to her cheeks. Daniel felt it too. The warmth of her presence, the faint scent of her perfume, the way her golden hair brushed lightly against his arm, it was intoxicating. He tried to focus on the words on the page, but his eyes kept drifting to her lips, soft and parted as she explained her ideas. Their hands met by accident, skin against skin, and neither of them pulled away. Instead, their eyes lifted, meeting in a silence that said more than words ever could. He saw the question in her gaze, the desire hidden just beneath her innocence, and in that moment he couldn't resist any longer. He leaned closer, his breath mingling with hers, and whispered in a voice low and rough, "Love is the greatest story of all." She froze for only a second before her lips curved into a trembling smile, and then his mouth found hers. The kiss was soft at first, hesitant, testing, but it deepened quickly, filled with the passion they had both suppressed for far too long. Emily melted into his embrace, her hands sliding up to his neck, pulling him closer as if she never wanted to let go. The world outside disappeared. There was only the warmth of his lips, the strength of his arms, the hunger building between them. Daniel kissed her cheeks, her jaw, the curve of her neck, each touch sending shivers down her spine. Emily whispered his name like a secret she had always wanted to confess. Her body pressed against his, her heart racing wildly, every nerve alive with desire. The classroom, once a place of lectures and lessons, transformed into something forbidden and intoxicating, a place where boundaries blurred and hearts gave in to temptation. Their kiss became urgent, desperate, as though they were afraid of losing this moment. Every touch was bold, every breath heavy with longing, their closeness breaking every rule yet feeling more right than anything ever had. That night, under the fading light and the silence of the empty college, their bond changed forever. They were no longer just professor and student. They were two souls lost in the fire of a romance that had finally, inevitably begun. After that evening, nothing between them was the same. Every look carried a secret meaning. Every word was laced with an unspoken desire that only they understood. In class, Daniel tried to maintain the image of a calm, professional professor, but every time his eyes met Emily's across the room, his heart betrayed him. Her smile lingered too long. Her gaze softened too deeply, and it was enough to ignite a fire inside him. She, too, found it harder to pretend. The pages of her notebook became filled not just with notes about literature, but with sketches of his name, thoughts of his touch, and the memory of his lips on hers. The air between them grew heavier each day, charged with passion, and they both knew it was impossible to go back. Their secret romance blossomed in the shadows, away from the curious eyes of the campus. Daniel would call her into his office under the excuse of discussing assignments. But once the door closed, books and papers were forgotten. Their hands would find each other, and kisses would follow, soft at first, then burning with need, the kind of kisses that left them breathless. Emily would sit on his desk, her arms wrapped around his neck, while his lips traced the delicate line of her throat, each touch sending waves of desire through her. They laughed quietly between their stolen moments, knowing how dangerous it was, yet unable to resist. Sometimes they met in the library, in quiet corners where the dim light and silence wrapped around them like a secret. Daniel would slide a book from the shelf, pulling her close under the pretense of helping her read, but his whisper against her ear and the way his fingers brushed her waist betrayed his true intention. Emily's breath would quicken, her body leaning into him as their lips met in hurried, hungry kisses hidden between the tall shelves of books. The thrill of being discovered only made their passion stronger. Every stolen moment sweeter and more dangerous. Late nights became their sanctuary. Emily would visit his apartment under the excuse of study sessions, and behind closed doors they gave in to the love that consumed them. They kissed until their lips ached, touched until every inch of their bodies burned with desire, and whispered promises that felt too real to be just a secret. Their love was bold, reckless, and intoxicating, a fire that grew stronger every time they were together. They knew the risks, knew the world would never understand, but none of it mattered when she was in his arms, when his lips were on hers, when their hearts beat in unison. It was more than passion now, and every kiss that carried the weight of everything they felt, but could never say aloud. They had crossed the line and embraced it fully, living in a dangerous romance that consumed them both, a love story that was forbidden yet unforgettable. Please click subscribe to our channel. We have more stories coming soon. Miss any new stories? Thank you for listening.